Julia began to notice a distinct shift in Mark's demeanor, not long after he started reporting to Mr. Thompson, the new project manager known for his rigorous and, at times, unorthodox approach to leadership. Previously energetic and open, Mark had become a shadow of his former self, his usual enthusiasm for work replaced by a palpable tension that he carried home each night. It was not just the extra hours at the office that were wearing him down. Something more was amiss, something that seemed to gnaw at his sense of comfort and safety. At first, Mark dismissed Julia's concerns, chalking up his tiredness and irritability to the demands of his new role. But as weeks turned into months, the change in him became impossible to ignore. He was quieter during meals, more reserved, and his smiles, once frequent and heartfelt, now seemed forced and fleeting. Julia missed the light-hearted banter that used to define their dinners after work, now replaced by silence or clipped conversations about mundane things that barely masked the growing distance between them. One evening, as Julia drove to pick Mark up from work, she rehearsed how she might broach the subject delicately. She planned to suggest a weekend getaway, something to break the cycle of late nights and strained silence. However, as she pulled up near the office, she was startled to see Mark and Mr. Thompson standing close together in the dimly lit parking lot. The sight of them was not unusual, but the intensity of their interaction was striking. Mr. Thompson's face was stern, his body language dominant as he seemed to tower over Mark, who appeared unusually small and subdued. Julia rolled down the window slightly, the cool evening air brushing against her face as she strained to hear their voices. The words were muffled, but the tone was unmistakable. Mr. Thompson's voice was sharp, his words clipped. Mark responded in low tones that bespoke frustration and discomfort. The exchange seemed to be more than just a debrief of the day's work. It was a clear display of power, one that left Mark looking defeated as Mr. Thompson walked away, his steps echoing in the quiet of the evening. As Mark got into the car, his expression was weary, his eyes avoiding hers. Julia's heart sank. The man next to her was far from the vibrant partner she knew and loved. The drive home was quiet, too quiet, and it was clear that whatever had occurred between Mark and Mr. Thompson was more than just a tough end to a long day. That night, as they lay in bed, the distance between them felt like miles. Julia turned to Mark, her voice soft, her hand reaching for his. "Talk to me, please," she whispered, her concern more evident than ever. The floodgates opened, and Mark confessed how Mr. Thompson's management style was not just demanding but demeaning. His boss frequently belittled him in front of colleagues, invaded his personal space, and threatened subtle repercussions for any complaints. The job that once brought him so much pride and satisfaction had become a source of daily dread. Julia listened, her heart breaking for Mark and her mind racing for solutions. It was clear that Mr. Thompson had crossed numerous lines, turning Mark's workplace into an environment of intimidation and fear. Together they lay in the dark, pondering the unspeakable turn their lives had taken because of one man's misuse of power. The revelation was a painful but necessary first step in addressing a situation that could no longer be ignored. They needed a plan, one that would address the wrongs without putting Mark's career, or their livelihood, at unnecessary risk. The road ahead would be difficult, but Julia was determined to stand by Mark, to help him reclaim his dignity and his happiness, no matter the challenges that lay ahead. Mark's transformation was undeniable and deeply concerning. The vibrant, enthusiastic man Julia had married seemed increasingly a memory, replaced by someone who was shrinking under the weight of stress and anxiety. At home, conversations dwindled to monosyllables. Mark's laughter, once so frequent and full-hearted, had faded into silence. His smiles were fleeting, and his eyes, once bright and expressive, now often stared off into the distance, clouded with worry. Julia's concern for Mark deepened with each passing day. She observed him closely, noting how he seemed to brace himself each morning, steeling himself for the day ahead. Evenings brought no relief. He often returned home looking exhausted, not just physically but emotionally, as if each day chipped away at his spirit. His condition was more than just a response to a heavy workload. It was a reaction to something far more corrosive. Determined to understand the full extent of the situation, Julia decided to visit Mark's office under the pretext of bringing him lunch, hoping a surprise visit might also give her insight into his work environment. As she entered the office, the atmosphere was immediately palpable. Tense and uncomfortably formal, she navigated through cubicles and greeted Mark's colleagues with a polite smile, feeling the undercurrents of a workplace that seemed to operate under an unspoken strain. Approaching Mark's cubicle, she overheard voices. One of them unmistakably Mark's, the other, harsh and condescending, she presumed was Mr. Thompson's. Pausing out of sight, she listened as Mr. Thompson's voice cut through the air, his words sharp and demeaning. "If you can't handle this project, maybe I made a mistake promoting you," he snapped, his tone both a challenge and a threat. Mark's response was meek, apologetic. "I'm doing the best I can," he said, his voice low and strained. Julia rounded the corner just in time to witness Mr. Thompson standing uncomfortably close to Mark, his posture dominating, his finger pointed accusingly. The sight of Mark, so diminished and cornered, ignited a protective fury in Julia. She stepped forward, her presence surprising both men. Lunch forgotten, Julia confronted the situation head-on. "Is everything okay here?" she asked, her tone deliberately calm but firm, challenging Mr. Thompson's authority in his own domain. Mr. Thompson, caught off guard, straightened up and offered a strained smile. "Just discussing project details," he said smoothly, though his eyes narrowed slightly, not used to being questioned. Mark looked up at Julia, a mix of relief and embarrassment in his eyes. He nodded slightly as if to reassure her, but the message was clear. Things were far from okay. Julia, maintaining her composure, smiled politely at Mr. Thompson. "I brought lunch, thought Mark could use a break," she said, her words light but her eyes hard, communicating silently to Mr. Thompson that she saw through his facade. The ride home later that day was quiet, but as soon as they arrived, Julia addressed what she had witnessed. "Mark, what I saw today, that's not okay. You don't have to endure that," she said, her voice gentle yet insistent. Mark sighed, a sound of resignation mixed with relief. He opened up about the daily belittlements, the constant pressure, and the fear of losing his job if he stood up to Mr. Thompson. Julia listened, her heart aching for Mark, anger simmering at the injustice. "This is harassment, Mark. It's not just about tough management, it's abusive," she declared, her decision firm. "We need to do something about this, for your well-being and for the principle of it." Together, they discussed their options. Reporting Mr. Thompson was daunting, but Julia's resolve bolstered Mark's courage. They agreed to start documenting everything, to seek advice from a legal standpoint, and to reach out to HR discreetly. Julia's support was unwavering. She was determined to help Mark navigate this challenge, to reclaim his dignity and ensure that no one else would have to suffer a similar ordeal under Mr. Thompson. This was a fight not just for Mark, but for the integrity of their future together. Mark confessed that the environment Mr. Thompson created was suffocating, every day presenting a new challenge against his resolve. "It's more than just being tough. It's like he enjoys the power, the control he has not just over the work but over me personally," Mark explained, his voice reflecting a mixture of defeat and clarity. He detailed how Thompson would often make demands that crossed into his personal time, expecting calls and updates late into the night, disregarding any boundary between professional and personal life. The emotional toll was evident as Mark shared how this constant pressure was not only affecting his work performance, but also seeping into their home life, casting long shadows over their relationship. "I hate bringing this stress home to you," he admitted, his guilt over the situation compounding the stress. The acknowledgement of how these issues were impacting their marriage was painful yet necessary, laying bare the extent of Mr. Thompson's influence on their lives. Feeling trapped by the situation, Mark expressed his fears about the potential consequences of standing up to Mr. Thompson. His career, which he had built over many years, seemed at risk, a thought that weighed heavily on him. "I worry about what happens if I speak up and he retaliates. What if I lose my job, or worse, what if it doesn't change anything at all? He pondered, the uncertainty of the outcomes holding him back from taking action. Julia listened, her heart aching with each word. Seeing Mark so vulnerable, she felt a surge of protectiveness and resolve. We can't let him continue this way. It's not just about the job, Mark, it's about you, your well-being, she insisted, her determination firming. Together, they began to plan their response. Reporting to HR seemed like a formidable step, but Julia was steadfast. We'll document everything, every demand, every inappropriate comment or action. We'll build a case, Mark, one that they can't ignore, she strategized, her mind working through the logistics of gathering evidence and seeking legal advice. The idea of reaching out to HR was daunting. They discussed the possible outcomes, weighing the risks and benefits. What if we approached someone in HR confidentially first, just to get a sense of what might happen? Julia suggested, trying to mitigate the risks as much as possible. They pondered the idea of reaching out to other colleagues who might have also experienced similar treatment. There's power in numbers, Julia pointed out. If others are experiencing the same, maybe we can support each other. As they talked, a plan began to take shape. It wasn't just about confronting Mr. Thompson or safeguarding Mark's job anymore. It was about reclaiming their peace, about standing up to a wrong that was undoubtedly affecting others as well. The discussion, though heavy with the reality of their situation, was also imbued with a sense of empowerment. Deciding to take action, no matter how challenging the road ahead, was a pivotal step away from victimhood towards advocacy, not just for Mark, but potentially for others in his position. By the end of the conversation, both felt a cautious sense of hope. The path forward was fraught with challenges, but they had a plan and each other. Julia's unwavering support gave Mark the strength he needed to consider steps he might never have dared to take alone. Together, they prepared to face whatever came next, fortified by their mutual resolve to fight not just for Mark's career, but for his dignity and well-being. This was the beginning of a significant change, one that they hoped would lead to a better, more respectful work environment. The process began with reaching out to a trusted mentor within the company, someone who had always shown integrity, and whom Mark felt could provide not only guidance but also discretion. They met in a quiet cafe away from the office, where Mark laid out his concerns without revealing too much, gauging the mentor's reaction. The advice was pragmatic and grounded in a deep understanding of the company's culture. Document everything, the mentor suggested, echoing Julia's earlier advice. Build a case that is undeniable, and most importantly, know that you're not alone in this. Emboldened by the mentor's support, Mark and Julia took the next critical step. They began to document every instance of Mr. Thompson's inappropriate behavior. Mark started keeping a detailed log of interactions, noting dates, times, exact phrases used, and witnesses, if any. Julia helped organize the information, ensuring it was both clear and comprehensive. This meticulous record became their routine, a way of reclaiming some control over the situation. Each entry was a small assertion of Mark's rights and a building block toward a larger goal. With the evidence growing, the gravity of formally reporting Mr. Thompson to Human Resources became more real. They knew this was not just about one report. It was about challenging a toxic element within the corporate structure. To bolster their position, they sought legal counsel to understand the full scope of their rights and the potential repercussions. The lawyer provided clarity on employment law, outlining protections against retaliation and the importance of a well-documented case. This legal perspective added another layer of confidence, a shield to carry into the battle they were preparing for. While Mark focused on gathering evidence and seeking advice, Julia explored additional avenues of support. She found a local support group for families dealing with workplace harassment. Attending meetings, she listened to stories from others who had faced similar challenges, drawing strength from their resilience. The group provided not just emotional support, but practical advice, from coping strategies to recommendations for professional resources. The solidarity found in these meetings reminded Julia that their struggle was part of a broader societal issue, one that many others faced. It brought a sense of community and a realization that silence benefited only the perpetrators of abuse. This collective wisdom and the shared experiences helped Julia gather additional strategies and insights that she brought back to Mark, each one strengthening their resolve and their plan. As they continued to build their case, the couple maintained a united front, checking in with each other frequently to discuss developments and share feelings. This journey, though fraught with challenges, brought them closer. They were partners in every sense, navigating a difficult path together. The adversity they faced served not only to confront the immediate issue with Mr. Thompson, but also to fortify their relationship, deepening their trust and understanding of each other. As the day to submit the report to Human Resources approached, Mark and Julia reviewed everything one last time. They went over their documentation, revisited the legal advice they had received, and prepared mentally for the step they were about to take. They understood the potential for a disruptive outcome, but they also knew that standing up for what was right was the only choice they could make with clear consciences. The night before they planned to go to HR, they sat together, going over their journey so far. They acknowledged the uncertainty of the future, but recognized that they had done everything with thoroughness and thoughtfulness. Whatever the outcome, they knew they had taken every possible step to not only protect Mark, but also potentially help others who might be suffering in silence. This was not just about one report. It was about setting a precedent, about declaring that such behavior had no place in their lives or in the workplace. They were ready, come what may, to see it through. Submitting the report to HR was a moment fraught with tension and hope. The document, detailed and meticulously prepared, was more than just a collection of grievances. It was a testament to the resolve to challenge a toxic work environment. As soon as it was handed over, the atmosphere was charged with the seriousness of the allegations. The HR representative assured Mark and Julia that the matter would be handled with the utmost confidentiality and urgency, recognizing the potential implications for the workplace culture. The following days were a waiting game, each day stretching out with anticipation and anxiety. But soon, HR confirmed that an official investigation into Mr. Thompson's conduct was underway. This news came as a relief, yet it was just the beginning of a broader scrutiny. Within a few days, it became evident that Mark was not alone in his experiences. Other colleagues, emboldened by his step forward, began to come forward with their own stories, painting a picture of a pattern of behavior that could no longer be ignored. The investigation gathered pace, and the testimonies from various employees added depth to the case against Mr. Thompson. It was no longer about individual incidents, but about recognizing and rectifying a systemic issue within the company. As the truth came to light, the company was compelled to act decisively. Mr. Thompson was put on administrative leave, pending the outcome of the investigation, a move that signaled the seriousness with which the company was now treating the issue of workplace harassment. In the wake of these developments, the company initiated a review of its policies on managerial conduct and employee protection. Workshops and training sessions were organized, aiming to educate everyone from upper management to new hires about the importance of a respectful and safe working environment. These initiatives marked a significant shift in company policy, influenced by the courage of those like Mark who had dared to speak out. Meanwhile, Mark began attending counseling sessions to address the emotional and psychological impact of his experiences. The counseling provided him with tools to understand and process the complex feelings of guilt, anger, and betrayal that had affected his well-being. It was a space where he could reflect on his personal journey and start healing from the scars left by the harassment. Julia stood by Mark through every step, her presence a constant source of comfort and strength. The ordeal had tested their relationship in ways they had never anticipated, but it also forged between them a deeper bond, rooted in mutual respect and understanding. They learned to communicate more openly about their fears and hopes, about the vulnerabilities and strengths that defined them both. This open dialogue became the cornerstone of a renewed, stronger relationship. Reflecting on the journey, Julia realized the profound impact of their actions, not just on their personal lives, but also on the broader community within the company. Speaking out had set in motion a ripple effect, prompting changes that would protect others from experiencing similar mistreatment. It was a powerful reminder of the difference that one voice could make, especially when it spoke out against injustice. The couple came to understand that while the path they had chosen was fraught with challenges, it was also lined with the potential for significant positive change. They vowed to continue supporting each other and to always stand up against wrongdoing, no matter the setting. Their experience had shown them the strength that could be found in facing challenges together, in the solidarity of shared struggles and triumphs. As they moved forward, Mark and Julia were more committed than ever to fostering an environment, both at home and at work, where respect and integrity were paramount. They had seen firsthand the damage that could occur when those values were compromised, and they were determined to advocate for a culture where such breaches could not take root. Their journey had been difficult, but it was imbued with the knowledge that from adversity could come growth, and